Hello, everybody. We're here tonight with another podcast of a school board candidate. This one is actually unique. We have Emily Peterson here, and she is actually an incumbent. She is currently on the Alpine School Board and is running to be a member of the school, be a member of the new district whose name might be Timpanogos, it might be something else. That district covers Orem, Vineyard, Linden, and Pleasant Grove. She counts as some of her accomplishments as a current member of the school board that she's an advocate for parents, children, and teachers. She goes out of her way to listen to parents and make sure that she hears their concerns and tries to address them. And she counts it as one of her signature accomplishments that she helped pass a really generous benefits package for teachers to ensure that they are very happy in their employment as teachers in the district. Emily, welcome.
Thank you.
We're glad to have you here.
It's good to be here.
Well, thank you. And of course, I always want to start these out with candidates by asking that question. Now, you're actually on the school board, so you had to run for office once, and yet here you are doing it again. What has compelled you to re-up and run for re-election?
I mean, campaigning is my favorite, so obviously that's why. No, I started running because a few years ago, it's kind of a twofold thing. Kind of around the same time, they tried to move my children's DLI, which is a dual language immersion program, and that's what kind of perked my ears, and I was like, oh, what's going on? And kind of around the same time, my kid's music teacher moved on to other things, and then kind of that whole school ended up in kind of this like turmoil, right? They were gonna move, not gonna move, gonna move, not gonna move, and they lost music. And so I started getting involved in trying to figure out what the best thing is. And as decisions were being made and the school district was talking about doing these things, I was like, you guys need a parent. You need somebody that has kids in the school that can say, this is how we're going to be affected if we make, this decision or this decision as far as moving programs. And then on top of that, I have children with various learning things. And my one child that is like a creative genius, she didn't have a music teacher. And to me, that was tragic, genuinely, because as somebody that also grew up with learning disabilities, the reason I went to school was for music and art. And so it was kind of running the first time, and I would like to continue this. I've been researching how I can get music and art back in the elementary schools. Anyway, that's why I've been running, is to keep our special programs, keep the arts in the school, because you have to educate the right brain and the left brain to educate the whole child.
Well, that's interesting. So you have kids with, we won't call them disabilities, but they have unique challenges,
Yeah.
and music really helps, and I've heard that for a lot of people, music is more than just entertainment, that it actually really stimulates the mind and can really get the creative juices flowing in so many different areas. Is that what you see? So many different ways.
Oh, definitely. And it helps us process emotion, right? For all of human history, thousands and thousands of years, we have evidence of art and music and performance, and this is how we process through things that happen in our lives, and making sure that our kids have a good introduction to that and ways to process through things creatively, to me is a very important life skill.
Well, and it sounds like you're really an advocate for making sure that every kid has that opportunity. That's fantastic. Well, moving into kind of a touchy subject now. Recently, we've seen a number of tragedies with a shooting at UVU. We had a very unfortunate incident at Canyon View Junior High, which I think you're very aware of. And we've also seen some others. And it's got to be on the top of a lot of parents' minds. How do we address this thing about school safety? How do we make sure that when parents send their kids to school, I mean, obviously they want them educated, clearly, but they want them safe too. What can we do, or what can you do as a school board member to try to help that out?
Yeah, and we kind of talked about this before, but this is kind of really raw for me right now. I just got out of a meeting with teachers that are heroes, literally heroes, that were very much affected by this. And one of the things that's really hard for me that I've been wrestling with is we have policies and we have procedures and we have things to keep guns out of schools, and even with all of those things, we've had to make it through. And the first one, thankfully, a kid saw something, said something, and it turned out to be, as good as that type of situation could be. And the second one was tragic. And the only thing I can think of really is that as adults, I feel like we could do better at toning down our rhetoric. And, we tend to go to these extremes of like, people are, fascists or Hitler or whatever, and we keep talking in this extreme language. And of course, our children who are learning about actual Hitler or whatever, and I know I'm being extreme in this, only to prove the point that I feel like we as adults need to tone down the rhetoric and say, it's okay to disagree with somebody, and it's okay if somebody has a different opinion than you. That doesn't make them bad. Sometimes, we want to be moral people and we want to make good choices, and sometimes we have to kind of take the good and bad out of it and say, this person believes this, and you know what? They can believe that, but we believe this, and that's okay. We can believe that, and it's okay that we disagree, and it doesn't ever have to make it to violence.
So it sounds like if we could have an open kind of a dialogue where ideas can be vetted and talked about, and people cannot be tried to push into one persuasion or another, but we can have just sort of this open exchange of ideas would help that kind of a situation.
Like I said, it's something I've been wrestling with a lot, and it's kind of the only thing I can land on is we have just been through a lot of contention in the last 5 years, and we just need to take a step back and realize that our kids struggle when we struggle, and just, we don't have to be perfect or anything, but just kind of toning it back a little bit and being like, it's okay to disagree. It's okay to be uncomfortable. It's okay to any of these things that we don't like as humans. We don't like to be angry, and we don't like to disagree. It makes us uncomfortable, but it's okay. Like, that's part of the human experience, is to disagree with people. And I cannot say that will solve all the world problems, but that's what I've kind of landed on as I've kind of been wrestling with this very thing.
Well, obviously, where you're on the school board and you've had to do that directly, I'm sure that's very personally affected you. And it sounds like you care very much about getting this right.
I really do.
Yeah, and bless you for that.
Thank you.
Well, it's kind of interesting. You're actually not running for a seat in the Alpine School District. You're running for a seat in District X.
District X, I like it.
I'm an advocate for Orem School District, but I think there's probably 3 or 4 towns that may object.
You know what? I think that you might be right. I think talking about rhetoric, it could get extreme.
Yeah, I'm entitled to my opinion.
You are.
You don't have to agree with me.
That's perfect.
That's
perfect. That's what we're going for.
All right. Well, what's coming up next is you have a brand new school district that you're actually not running for Alpine School District. You're running for Timpanogos or whatever it's called. And in addition to all the things you have to do now, you've got a whole lot of things that are going to have to happen with the new district. And let's just kind of group a couple of them together, because it seems like that's the biggest upcoming thing. You're going to have to pick a new superintendent, a new CFO, and you're going to have to realign a lot of school boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
So give me your process for how you're going to go about doing that.
Yeah. So this has been something that's been at the forefront. When I ran last year, I didn't actually know for sure that the district was going to split.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was when I came in, I was like, we got to figure this out, because we've got schools that are, it takes a certain number of kids to have a school that, where you can mix kids up in different classrooms and all of those things. And so as soon as I got on, I started meeting with each of the principals at all of the schools and talking about, what's going on and how can I help and what are some of the challenges. So after meeting with all of them, I had a meeting with our director of operations, and I just said, like, we have these 8 schools, and the problem is not that, they're half full, they're like 3/4 full and 2/3 full, and it's not like we can just take 2 schools and smush them into one school. It just doesn't work that easily. And so as we were talking, I kind of came up with this concept, like, we just need to erase all the boundaries and start over again. And then later I was told that it's called the mother of all boundary changes, a MOAB. But that whole idea started with me doing that research and going back to this meeting and talking through how are we going to do this, because each of the schools, particularly in North Orem, we have an ALL program or a dual language immersion program. ALL is advanced learning, or dual language immersion, or a behavior unit, or an autism classroom. And so it's not as simple as just like, well, we'll just, reboundary everything. It's also, we need to reboundary and figure out what we're doing with the program. Is it going to move to a different school? Are we going to combine two programs in one school? Like, how are we going to solve that as well? And as soon as I saw that it's a puzzle, it's not just like a easy solution. So what I think we need to do, erase all the boundaries. Well, first thing, we need to figure out moving freshmen up and all of the logistics of that. I have principals that are like, it's not if, it's when. And so, and it will help a lot, but it's not like a panacea. We're gonna have to.
Now, is that moving freshmen into the high school?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry. So moving freshmen into the high school would mean that we have some facilities things we need to manage with that. We need some more PE space of all of the things. So we have some high schools that will need to do that, and we have the room for it. It's not that we can't do it; it's that we need to pay for it, right? So that's where I would start, and then the question is: do we leave 6th grade in the elementary? Do we have, we're gonna have buildings? Do we have a building that's 6-7, and then, or 7-8s, or 5-6 and 7? There are a lot of different configurations that we could decide from that point. And then the question is, what do we do at the elementary school level? Do we, reboundary everything for sure, but then what are we gonna do with the programs? And so what we need, back to your question about superintendent, is we need a superintendent that can be open-minded and like solve this puzzle with the community. Because if there's anything that me being elected kind of showed us, is that we want our programs and we want the music and the arts in the schools. These are the things that I ran on last year, and I won by quite a bit, and so I think that, thank you, but really that just speaks to what we value in Orem and what we want in our Orem schools. And so how do we, solve all of those puzzles and keep intact that culture that we really appreciate in Orem of neighborhood schools and keeping a well-rounded education in the programs that we love.
Well, it sounds like you've already given it a fair amount of thought, and that's nice that you can hit the ground running. You've already had some experience with moving boundaries around, so at least you have some idea of where to start.
Definitely, yeah. I'm ready to get to work.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, now, and this one I understand you actually have some very definite opinions on. One of Alpine's school board's parting shots, which I think you're aware of, was a pretty substantial tax increase. In fact, it was, I don't know if it was their last school board meeting. Maybe they're still meeting. Are you still meeting as a school board with Alpine?
Yeah, we are still in charge of the education of our kids until July of 27. So we'll continue having meetings as usual for, at least another 6 months or so.
27 or 26?
27.
27. Oh,
Yeah.
So 2 years from now.
Yeah. So we have another 2 school years that we are in charge of.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're gonna still be going. We're gonna still be functioning. We're still gonna be fixing schools and all of the little things that break. And we just redid the turf at some of our schools. Like, we're still up and running.
Gotcha. All right. So back to this tax hike.
Yes.
First of all, since you are an incumbent, how'd you vote on that tax hike?
I voted no to the tax hike.
All right. And what was the vote, if you don't mind my asking?
The vote, it was a 5-2.
5-2.
Yeah.
So you and one other stalwart person said, no, we don't need to hike taxes. Excellent. All right. So that probably gives some insight into when you're faced with the idea of tax hikes in the new district. I would assume that you're going to be pretty reluctant to raise taxes unless there's a real dire need. Is that fair? How would you characterize it?
100%. And I think that we should learn from what's happened in the last 5 years. Again, we had a bond on a ballot that didn't pass, and it didn't pass in our area. So I think if we're going to ask for any sort of tax raise, it should go to the ballot. And then if the people say no, then we have a contingency plan.
Mhm.
And it's going to be in my opinion, it's going to be Orem, we say that we want our small neighborhood schools, this is what it's gonna cost. So
Mhm.
now, are you willing to pay that? If not, then that's fine, we can do other things, but you have to let us, move money around in a way that I don't think that the populace really wants. I don't think that Orem wants us to sell all our schools. I think that we wanna keep that property as community schools,
I
so.
can name names of people who do not want Orem to sell all that property.
I
So,
can too,
yeah.
yes,
And I think.
and I don't wanna see that,
Well, actually, I live in Orem, I could count myself among those people.
yeah,
I've always been of the opinion that, above a certain, or below a certain size, or above a certain size, that depending how you look at it, that smaller schools are better for kids,
Yeah.
especially in the grade school.
definitely. I govern, I don't know what the word is, but I'm over 8 elementary schools.
Mm-hmm.
And the ones that struggle are the ones that are either too full or not full enough.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've got a bunch in the sweet spot and they're doing great. So I see the whole spectrum of it. And so yeah, I feel like I'm getting a good handle on it.
All right, now, you're kind of an interesting spot because in the upcoming year, let's assume you get elected,
Mhm.
you're gonna be kind of negotiating with yourself because the new districts are gonna negotiate with Alpine to
Mhm.
divvy up the assets, the transportation, all that kind of stuff. How are you gonna approach that? I mean, obviously, I would assume you're gonna advocate for the new district, but also you're kind of wearing both hats here. How's that gonna work?
Yeah, so I think what's good is that because I am on the board right now, I can see what the different areas need or
Mhm.
don't need. And really a lot of the things, like we're coming out of this pretty good. We've got a lot of property. We have the highest income property tax per student. And so really it's a matter of, West, you need more portables and we want another bus. And those are really the assets that we're gonna be dividing in it. As far as land, water rights, all of those things are in code.
Mhm.
And so it's really things that are not the most expensive parts of running a school district. And so for me, part of it is like, as long as we can keep a good civil atmosphere, then I think that we're gonna come out really, really well. I think that if we start trying to go after more, that it could end up being worse for us, because right now we're walking away with a lot of property, a lot of tax base, a lot of things that will make us successful. I have no doubt that we're gonna have a great and successful school district, no matter how those things pan out. I know that those are things that a lot of people are really concerned with. I'm more concerned with, let's start up on the right foot.
Love it.
And part of that is making sure that, it's a whole county, right?
Mhm.
And so I would rather give portables to the west and, sorry, I'm gonna eat this microphone. I'd rather move the portables to the west that we don't need and get more buses or whatever it works. And I think as of right now, that is how all of us feel, is we just want the kids to get what they need. And my only concern with those things is that if it does turn ugly, then it goes to arbitration and we have to pay lawyers. And I don't wanna do that. I would rather figure it out as adults and.
All right, try to be grown up, try to build relationships, make it work.
Absolutely, and that's what I've been doing since I've been on the board. I've been doing those exact things, building bridges back and building good relationships around the county so that we can have a good and successful split. We have a lot of people watching us. This has not been done before. This is unprecedented, dividing a school district into 3, and people are going to learn from what we do right and what we do wrong. So I'd rather get it right.
Well, one other big aspect to the school split, or the
Mhm.
district split, is obviously Dan Peterson, the special ed school, does
Yes.
not sit in the new district.
Correct.
And as I understand it, we've got quite a number of kids from Orem going to Dan Peterson.
Mhm.
clearly you're gonna have to do something about that. Short-term plan, long-term plan, how do we take care of those needs?
Yeah, so this is something that we, as an Alpine school board, that we've put really at the top of our list of how do we make sure that we have 3 strong functioning districts. And really at the top of the list is this, how do we how do we keep these services going and not have any dips in learning or any of those things. So we had talked about potentially just remodeling a school, kind of reboundarying an elementary school out of use, and then we use that for our special education school. But as we started looking into it, it turns out it costs almost the same to just tear down a school and rebuild it. And that's kind of where we've landed. So unfortunately, we're kind of in the middle of trying to find how we're going to solve that. In the meantime, we do have a 5-year agreement where we can continue to use Dan Peterson. But the way the grants work, we would be getting more money for our district if we had that school within our own district. So that should be, pretty high up on our priority list of things to get going and get moving on. Because as every year that we have kids going to Dan Peterson, we will be writing a check to the central district for those kids. Mm-hmm. And happy to do it. I want to make sure kids get a good education and are well taken care of. I just think we should take care of our kids and have a school, a good place for that here. Another part, kind of a different but also important to keep, at the forefront, is there is also an early intervention program that we will be responsible for. And this is for children that are preschool age who have special needs. So, a speech delay or autism or something like that. And part of that is testing for hearing, testing for learning disabilities. We don't do all of that testing, but we do some of it. And that's another aspect that we need to just kind of have in mind, is we do need to provide those services of this early intervention preschool. And unfortunately, I don't have the numbers on it of how many kids we have with that. It's just another kind of part of that. And I know in some districts, they will combine their Dan Peterson type of a school with that preschool and the testing. And so it's all in one school. And so that could be something that we look into.
So a lot of options, but
a lot of options.
Short term, you got Dan Peterson available for a while.
Yeah.
Gives you time to land on a really good option.
Yeah.
That's both cost effective but still provides the services for the kids.
Yep.
Well, speaking of other options here, Orem has, as you know, a lot of charter schools. I mean, off the top of my head, we've got Mazer, we've got Noah Webster, we've got UCAS, and I think there's probably a number of others too. I apologize for forgetting the 3 others there are, but there's at least those 3. And I've talked with school personnel, and their attitudes toward charter schools range all the way from outright hostility to kind of indifference. How do you want your relationship to be with the charter schools that are within in the district?
Yeah, I mean, parent choice is very important to me. I think it's important that as a parent that I have options for my kids. And because of that, why would we not make sure that public education is the best choice? So put those programs back. Make sure that our kids have a well-rounded education, that we're educating the whole child. But I have a lot of friends with kids in charter schools. I think that parents should have a wide variety of choices. I have tried to dig into the numbers and figure out how many kids we have in charter schools. See, especially with, this is kind of going back to reboundarying and all of that. But what we have in Orem now is a built-out population pretty much. So what we're going to have to look into is what does a cycling population look like in the schools? Right now we're looking at lower numbers, even including charter schools and those other schools. They are also less enrolled. And that's just part of a cycle of a population. And so what we need to discover, what we need to study and figure out is, what is this going to look like as it cycles back up? So how do we make sure that as we're reboundarying or as we're working with charter schools and private schools and all of this, that we keep enough space in our schools? Because we don't want to close too many schools and then all of a sudden all of our kids are in portables or whatever because we, closed all our schools and now we've got a growing population. So it kind of goes back to, we need to make sure that we're looking at good numbers. But yeah, I don't quite understand as well as some other people how the relationship between the school district and the charter schools work. But like I said, I think parent choice is really important. So let's make public education the best choice. I grew up in a school district where the private school and the public school were like right on par. And I think we can do that here too.
Well, I can say, having served briefly as a board member of Noah Webster, as far as I could tell, the Alpine School Board didn't know we existed. I think they did, but they kind of didn't. We never talked to them, they never talked to us, and so I would just suggest at a minimum, say, hey, listen, roll this together. Let's at least talk to each other.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah.
And the other thing I would say, I've asked this of other candidates, I'll ask it of you. I think I know the answer, but parent comes to you and says, my kid has really got a mind for science and engineering, for the STEM. Would you dare recommend UCAS to them, saying that might be your best option right now?
I'm going to be fully honest.
Yeah, do.
I don't know very much about UCAS.
UCAS, Utah College of Applied Sciences. It's a charter school down by UVU, and that's what they do is STEM education.
I do know what UCAS is. Oh my goodness. Okay.
Just had to jog your memory a little bit.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yeah, I mean, if
See,
that's...
we're remedying the problem right here, right now, where school board members aren't aware of charter schools. We're helping that out.
I know, I'm
right
thinking
here.
education. I appreciate it. Yeah, no, I think that sounds great. If that is the avenue that would be good for them. I don't know a ton about UCAS, so I can't be like, yes, 100%, but if that is what it's for and that child is excelling. Same with, there's a performing arts school in Orem. I would absolutely send a child there if that was the better place for them. So I think kids should go where they're going to thrive.
All right, well, it sounds like you like charter schools, you like parental choice, and you just really want the best for all of your students, and that's fantastic. One of the things that happened recently is the legislature passed a bill to essentially ban cell phones from use in schools.
Yeah.
Was that a good thing or a bad thing?
So that was passed based on a book called The Anxious Generation. I don't know if you're familiar with that book, but they talk a lot about how it's important for kids to have a sense of autonomy and a sense of like, if they can't get a hold of their parent, that they can solve their problems. And so in that way, I think it's really good. I've heard a lot of really positive things, more positive than negative things about the cell phone policy, even from students talking about how they're able to learn better, they're able to listen better. People aren't on their phones, they aren't getting, I heard one teacher say that within like a 30-minute span, they had 8 interruptions in their classroom from notifications on phones. Because even if they're silent in their backpack, it's a struggle. So I think generally it's a good thing. I would also say that a lot of the things that we've tried to do is be reasonable about it, right? Like if there is an emergency, we make sure that there is a way that kids can access their phones. It's not like they're gone. There are rumblings that they want to make it even more strict than it is now. I think right where we are is a good spot where kids still can access, it's either in a pouch in the front of the classroom, it's in their backpack, or it's in a pouch where the unlocking mechanism is just, the teacher has it, and so if the child needs it, they can just unlock their pouch and get their phone. I think if we got, excuse me, much more strict, it could be a challenge. It could backfire. I think where we are right now is a good spot where we have a lot fewer distractions in the classroom. We have a lot more time to learn, and kids are getting that, they're like actually talking to each other in the hallways, and they're interacting person to person a lot more. So yeah, in that way, I think it's good. I don't know how I feel about making it even more strict than it is now. But I've also heard, don't take my kid's phone away. I provide that for my kid. I want to be able to contact them in an emergency. So I have heard the other side of it, but their response has been more positive than negative.
Oh, good. I mean, my personal opinion, having grown up without a cell phone at all and seemed to have made it to adulthood, some people
You
would
did
argue
it.
that, but
Yes.
it seems to be doable. And I see a lot of kids on cell phones that, frankly, it seems to be doing a lot more harm than good to them. So,
Mhm.
for what it's worth, that's one parent who has no more kids in school's opinion. So, one of the big things that school boards work on is buildings and maintaining, upkeep, new buildings,
Mhm.
all of that stuff. And obviously, all of that costs money.
Mhm.
And all that money ultimately comes from taxpayers, for the most part, grants and so forth, but mostly from taxpayers.
Yes.
What's your approach gonna be? I mean, obviously, you have to keep buildings up to snuff, you gotta have places for kids to go to school, but they don't need to go to Taj Mahal. So how's your approach?
Yeah, so this would be something where, going back to the conversation about bonding,
Mhm.
that I think that I would like to leave it up to taxpayers. I would like to say, if we're gonna do something like rebuilding schools or anything like that, and we don't have the cash,
Mhm.
I would far prefer to put a bond on a ballot than put in a lease revenue bond that is more like a mortgage, which is what on Alpine School District, um, I mean, I even helped to pass one for the West District. But just personally, I think we should ask the public about, especially big projects. When we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars, I don't feel comfortable putting that on taxpayers without giving taxpayers a voice in that. So I would go for a geo bond, which is where it goes on the ballot and then you vote for it. And to me, that's just a better way to govern. And then, like we talked about previously, in the last 5 years, we've had a bond not pass in our area. So we have a contingency. We say, we can either, pin up the school for cheaper, which I don't actually know if that's possible, but there are some that might be possible. We have several schools that just have like one section of the school that's not seismically safe. So I didn't like preface this very well, but we have until 2033 to get all of our schools seismically safe.
Mhm.
So one of the arguments about closing Sharon Elementary, for example, is that it's not seismically safe, and so it was better to move those kids to a safe school than to leave them there. So we have three other schools that are kind of in a similar position that we need to figure out, and that's the elementary schools. And then we have one junior high. Anyway, but all of that to say that what I would like to see is we have plan A is the bond. Plan B is the bond doesn't pass, what are we gonna do then? And I think especially if we educate the public about what the implications are for each of those things, and then we just move forward with whatever the taxpayers decide. That's my general opinion on especially big bonds. If you're talking 3 elementary schools post-COVID, that's $120 million. That's a big ticket item to just say, this is what's best for kids, and I'm just gonna do that because I can.
Mhm.
I don't feel like that would be responsible governance. I think it would be better to say, taxpayers, we need to do this thing. It's gonna be expensive. It's gonna be $120 million. Is that okay? If not, we're gonna have to, smush kids into another school that is safe and close the ones that aren't.
Gotcha. All right. And school boards and of course in general are working with the legislature, or should be, because the legislature ultimately and the state school board are the ones who set policy for the state. Have you worked with legislature in the past, and how have you approached that, and what will you do going forward?
Yeah, so I have, I've been up there and I've participated, and I have been at the education committee quite a few times. As far as interacting, that's something that I'm still building my capacity in.
Mhm.
But you're absolutely right. Working with the legislature is really important, and understanding the implications both ways. That as a school board member, we want what's best for kids, and we also understand that the legislators also want to do what's best for kids, and that we should be working together to get the right laws passed and the right things to go through, so that we're all working together.
Oh, that's a good approach.
action.
Well, you know, in today's fast-paced world, it used to be when I was growing up that college was kind of the be-all, end-all.
Mm-hmm.
But now we have so many options. You've got college, you've got trade school, you've got MTech, you've got students go right for a journeyman or apprenticeship, all kinds of ways. And a lot of that begins to take place in high school. And
Yep.
high school is kind of where students begin to say, you know what, I feel like I would be really good at. I know, for example, for me, when I was in high school, we had an Apple IIe, a one and only PC in the entire high school. Yes, I'm dating myself, thank you. And I was absolutely enthralled with that machine. I had to know what made it work. And I ended up going to school to study electrical engineering. And yes, I do know how to build a computer now. Not a very good one, but I can build a computer. Anyway, long story short, how can you as a school board member help those students who are just trying to figure out who they are and where they want to go? How do you make that happen in high school?
Yeah, I love that. It reminds me, like, I was at a back to school night, and I saw these girls at the junior high, and their nails were so cute. And I was like, girls, are you so excited for the new school year? And I was like, your nails are so cute. And they were like, ugh, I hate school. And I was like, you know what? We have MTech. You can be a nail tech, and you can do that during high school. And they were like, what? And I was like, yes, it is this thing that we offer. It is an MTech thing. And I love how quickly they perked up. They were like, I can make it through junior high if it means I can go to high school and learn how to be a nail tech, and right out of high school get a job. And I think that we're seeing more and more that is the avenue that a lot of kids are going to take. Just like anecdotally, we are older millennials, and we graduated from college in 2007 and 2008.
Mm-hmm.
So as we were entering the workforce, everybody else was going back to the workforce. And people who had been in their careers for 25, 30 years were taking entry-level jobs. And we learned pretty quickly that college isn't necessarily what everybody said that it was. And so I am a huge advocate and proponent of, let's get these kids in apprenticeships. Let's make sure we've got as many class offerings as possible so that they can explore, what is it that I want to do? Where do I light up? Where do I shine? Because you're right, a lot of things could be done with apprenticeships or an MTech program, or Salt Lake Community College also has a technical college. Getting a CDL, you can do a lot of things with that. And I think especially for our boys, we need to boys and girls, but we need to make sure that they've got avenues and as many offerings and as many exposures to as many different things as possible, so that they can figure out kind of what they want to do. And I think you're right. I think high school is where we want to get that going, earlier if possible, but
at least by high school.
At least by high school, yes.
I gotta say, your nails are older from college.
They are. They're my
Did you
fall
have one
nails.
of those gals do that, or is that's your own?
No, it's me.
Okay, well, there you go. My nails are just plain.
They're just
boring.
They're great. They get the job done.
There you go. You know, when I was in the legislature, my freshman term, there was it was actually a Democrat representative who tried to run a bill basically saying that if by the end of third grade you couldn't read at grade level,
Mm-hmm.
The old adage goes that by third grade that you're learning to read,
Mm-hmm.
and after third grade you're reading to learn. And if by third grade you're not reading at level, her bill basically said you need to let the kid repeat third grade so they can learn how to read.
Mm-hmm.
The education community kind of lost their mind over that bill and didn't go very far. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, obviously that's not a statewide policy, but what's your thoughts on kids hitting the end of third grade, not being able to read? What do you do?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So it's something that my husband that I'm looking at over there, that we've had to have conversations about. Generally, it's better to keep kids with their peers, even if they're behind, because socially and emotionally, it's just better for the child to stay with their friends. And we have a lot of interventionists that come in and help our kids. I think sometimes it is necessary, and I think we should be a little bit more open to that conversation, of allowing kids to repeat a grade if they can't. I don't hear it happening very often, and the reason is that the implications for the child generally, the risks outweigh the benefits. It's not as good for them to have the social implications of being held back, and it doesn't. We can put in extensions and interventions and things for them to catch up generally. So that's kind of the way we approach it right now. But I think there are some cases where it probably would be beneficial.
Well, I also wonder, maybe just the mere threat of saying, hey, listen, if you can't get to the end of the road by the end of school, you're gonna see third grade all over again. Oftentimes, maybe that's the incentive they need to know that, yeah, this is real.
Yeah.
And I better start stepping it up.
Yeah. Yeah, and with some kids, it's just, it's just a struggle with some kids learning each of the phonics. Something that I think that we do really well as Alpine is we've gotten our testing to a point where we can do data-based interventions. So we are able to, with the scores that the kids get, we're able to say, this group of kids are really good at this part of reading, but not as good at this part. And so then they'll put those kids in the group that all are struggling with the same concept. They'll teach them that concept, and then they're able to move forward. And this is something that I really want to see in the new district, that we continue on with this data-based learning, where we're taking the, they're doing 2 different types of testing, and they kind of show different strengths and weaknesses with each kid. And then they're taking those scores and they're looking at the child, like each individual child in a class, and saying, this child needs help with this, and this child needs help with this, and this child needs help with this. They group them together, they teach them the concept, and they get them those interventions. And so we've seen a huge increase in proficiency, and I think we'll continue to. I think that hopefully we're just getting better and better at educating so that this is less of a challenge.
So it doesn't come up very much. Well, again, at the other end of the row is high school.
Yep.
I recall back in the day that a lot of seniors would take 2 classes their senior year because that's all they had to, and they'd spend the rest of the time going skiing or water skiing or camping or hiking or whatever, and they'd still get their diploma. It's better now, but I still hear a lot of senior semi-vacations happening. What do you do with kids who they're not really ready for college, they're not really ready to graduate, they didn't get anything out of high school? I assume that happens. How do you make that better?
Yeah, so we have some really great, once again, intervention teams that try to work with kids that are struggling to finish high school. There are classes that are available where the entire class is teachers helping the kids finish the credits that they need to graduate. So that helps with graduation rates in some cases. And then the other thing is it's a child by child basis, right? Some kids, like my son, took all of his hard classes before his senior year, so that his senior year he could take a lot fewer of the hard classes. He still does because he is who he is, but he doesn't have to. And I think once again, going back to that conversation of school isn't for everybody. Not everybody thrives in a school environment, and you should absolutely graduate from high school, right? You should take those credits and you should do those things. But if you get to a point where you've taken all the credits you need to graduate, I would say that rather than encouraging a child to go on vacations and do the skiing things, we even have in our schools right now apprentice programs where you can go and be an apprentice in a vet office or a hospital, or really we're trying to open it up for even more opportunities for apprenticeships. But getting those kids that maybe they have taken all of their core classes, they don't have to take any more really to graduate, putting them on a path to success, a path to maybe it's not college, maybe it's a path to MTech, maybe it's a path to an apprenticeship or something else, but getting them on a path so they're not floundering, like you're saying, on vacations or skiing or any of those, but they're actually on a path would be my answer to that.
Perfect. Well, we talked a lot about the grade school and holding back, and now we need to look at the high schools. And a lot of times what we'll see with some students and frankly with some parents is, look, just get my kid through. Okay, do whatever you gotta do, get them through. They're a good football player. They can get a D- in English. Just get them out of here. And we'll send kids into the world with a diploma that maybe doesn't mean as much as it could. All right. I'm hoping that, obviously we want everybody to graduate with a degree, and we want to graduate with a diploma, but we want it to mean something. How do we make that diploma for this new school district really mean something?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a real opportunity to make sure that we get it right. And I think it takes a lot, right? It takes a lot to get some of our kids to be able to get through high school. And I think something to focus on would be, how do we make sure that our kids make it through high school understanding what they need to be prepared for whatever the next step is. And we've talked about how there's a lot of different avenues our kids could go on. And we work really hard with some of our kids, putting them in special classes and things to get them caught up on their credits. And I think it's important to just really figure out what is this child's trajectory and how do we help them to make it through. And part of it is being proficient, right? Knowing how to read, knowing how to do math, knowing how to, what would be great is, let's put in a class about how to do taxes, right? Like, let's put some of this real world stuff in there too, because once they go out and then they are out in the world, and how do we make sure that, like you're saying, that our high school diplomas, that they continue to mean something, and that we have a good level of proficiency and that we're helping our kids be successful. Whatever that path looks like, we've already established that academics is not for everybody. Some of us thrive in that environment and some of us don't. And so how do we help our kids to have a good life, and like good enough where, I've heard a lot about, there's a story about this fisherman who in Mexico who goes and gets fish, and then he takes it home and he feeds his family and he spends the evening with his family. And somebody goes up to him and is like, what you could do is get somebody to help you, and then you could get more fish, and then you could sell it at the market so that then you could get more fish and take it home. And he's like, well, the point of that, I would do all this extra work and then I wouldn't get to see my family, and I wouldn't be able to just go home and enjoy being with my family and having these fish. So I think also to that whole point is, what's enough? What's a good life? And how do we coach our kids to have a good life, whatever that's going to look like? Part of that is making sure that they're making it through high school. Part of that is, if we move freshmen up, that gives them an opportunity to have that first year to kind of figure out what high school is, 2 solid years of high school to get all caught up, and then their senior year, once again, if they want to continue with academics, or if they want to go to college, they probably should continue in math and English. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult to get through college. Or do they do an apprenticeship? Do they go to MTech? Do they do some other avenue? But just making sure that we're getting our kids to a life that is good.
Excellent. Well, moving on to kind of a touchier subject. Now, Title IX's been recodified by President Trump and his administration to exclude what I would call biological boys from girls' sports. Clearly in high school, that's going to be, I think for the next while, an ongoing, very touchy issue. You're going to have parents who say, my son is a girl and needs to play in girls' sports, or my son is a girl and needs to be allowed to go in the girls' bathroom. And they're going to come to you. So how are you going to handle that?
Well, for starters, I feel like the legislature has kind of done a lot of work to try to keep that at bay.
Mm-hmm.
I think, I have a lot of compassion for somebody who's struggling with any sort of identity problems, or not even problems, but just any struggles. At the same time, if you're a male, you are stronger than a female. It doesn't matter. I'm not even 5 feet tall. And one of the things that my dad used to instill in us a lot was, if a man that's not that much bigger than you wants to attack you, there's very little that you can do. You have to figure out how to prevent that sort of thing. So I know I'm going to an extreme here, but just to say that there are biological differences, and we need to honor the girls. We need to honor women. We need to not let our spaces be taken over by boys. And that's not to say that I don't have compassion or that I want for anybody to feel uncomfortable or any of those things, but we need to protect women. Mm-hmm. And it's a very interesting world that we live in, that we've worked so hard as women to go from the entire prohibition movement was started because women were tired of their husbands getting drunk and beating them. And so that's kind of the beginning of this whole feminist first wave movement was, I can't live like this anymore. And so preachers and these women would start this prohibition. And we've worked through that. We've gotten to be able to vote. We've been able to split sports into men's and women's so that women had a chance to compete. And it's interesting to be in a time where we want to go backwards and try to compete with boys again. Let's just keep women's sports for women. I think maybe we make another category or something. I don't know. I don't want to seem heartless in the whole thing, but we need to continue to protect women and girls and not go backwards.
You're here. Well, and of course another thing that's happening in schools now, back in the day, it used to be called the Gay Straight Alliance Club. Mm-hmm. Now I guess there's a new club called the Gender Sexuality Alliance Clubs, mm-hmm. GSA. I haven't heard of it myself. Is that a thing in Alpine in the new district, or is that just something that may happen? Do you want that, or will you allow that to happen, or what's going to be the approach if somebody attempts to set one of those up in the new district?
I am not familiar with those clubs.
Which means they're not happening right now in Alpine.
I don't believe so.
At least not formally.
Right. So here's kind of my thing is I do not want children to be bullied for any reason. Mm-hmm. I don't care which direction you go, whether you're gay, straight, what you look like. Children should be at school and be safe. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I'm open to people doing what they want to do to feel safe. At the same time, I think it's flirting a line, right? When you're talking about sex with kids, mm-hmm. and you're talking about these very adult topics with minors, I think it puts you in a very precarious situation as an adult. And so I would be uncomfortable as an adult in a club like that, because at the end of the day, you are talking to children about sex, and that's inappropriate. So I apologize, I don't know very much about these clubs, and I don't know what's happening or not happening, but I think making sure kids feel safe is important, but also making sure kids are not being bullied for being straight, or teachers are not being pestered to, if they don't have a pride flag, that they are bad people. Mm-hmm. I think this has the opportunity to go either direction, and I think it's important to also remember that if we try to take something away from somebody we disagree with, then that gives them permission to take something away that we agree with. And so in some ways I'm a little bit more libertarian, right? Where if, let's say I wanted I can't think of anything, give me a second, like a Save Utah flag, club, mm-hmm. that I wouldn't want somebody to be like, no, you can't do that because it's too far leaning one way. So, but where I feel like the line is that when you're talking to minors about sex, that's inappropriate and it's against the law.
There you go. Okay.
Sorry, I kind of danced around it trying to get to a point, but hopefully it makes sense.
It's a touchy point.
It is.
And clearly, at some point, you're gonna have to come down and make a decision. I mean, as a board member, you don't get to skirt decisions. At some point, you have to make it.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds like you wanna be thoughtful, but also understanding that inappropriate behavior is inappropriate behavior, period.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So the other part of that problem is sometimes you may have teachers who want to take it upon themselves to push an ideology. And it could be far left or far right. I mean, obviously, if it's mainstream, that's okay. But if it's far left or far right, how do you handle that? Have you had to deal with any teachers like that in your tenure? Or?
No, so we have very strict policies, and Utah has very strict laws about what can and can't be discussed in classrooms. And to my knowledge, that isn't really a huge problem. That doesn't mean that it's not, right? I don't know everything that's happening in every classroom.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely that attitude of, it is, education tends to lean more liberal.
Mm-hmm.
But I also have heard really encouraging things. I've heard teachers say things like, you're gonna have to talk to your parents about that because that's not my place to tell you. So I like to think that there's more of that going on than the opposite. I think as we educate our kids and also our staff on what is and isn't appropriate, we are getting better at not crossing those boundaries. At least that's been my experience in my little short time.
All right, so you haven't had to deal with much, which is great, and hopefully that's not going to be something you have to do a lot of coming up.
Yeah, we have really good staff. I can't say 100% of all the teachers are perfect and nobody is doing any of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say in general, our teachers are very respectful, understanding that our students are coming from most likely a household with a certain set of values, that they're not trying to kind of shove something else down our kids' throats for the most part.
Gotcha. Well, when I go to the voting booth now, I don't live in your district. Well, tell me, first of all, what area does your district, or your seat area cover?
Yeah, so I am seat 5, and it goes from 2000 north to 800 north,
Mm-hmm.
and then all the way up the canyon, and then it goes over to about like 800 west. There's a couple of places where it goes a little further west, not quite to the freeway. But
So essentially the north part of Orem.
yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Orem, so if I were to kind of oversimplify that, 8th north
Yes.
in Orem, but you don't go into Linden.
I don't go into Linden. I do
Okay.
currently, on my current,
Right.
as
But
Alpine,
the
but
new,
not
the
in
new
the new.
board area would be
Yeah.
just kind of the north third of Orem.
Yes.
Gotcha. All right, and so the people in that area, when they go to the voting booth, they're gonna see your name and somebody else's name there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, what is your pitch now to get those people to click the Emily box?
First of all, I have kids in school currently. My oldest is a senior, my youngest is in 4th grade. So any decisions that I make are gonna directly impact my own children. I think it's really important to have that perspective. Once again, the parent perspective. What is this gonna do at a family level? What is this gonna do at a community level? Also, when I was elected, I had a very specific idea of what I wanted in governance. I wanted somebody that was going to show up. I wanted somebody that was going to ask questions. I wanted somebody that was going to try to help solve the problem, be part of the solution. And I've done it. I've been in the schools. I've come up with solutions. We're ready to get to work. And it's because I've been studying this all year. How are we going to be successful? And I've done it. I say that I'm fiscally conservative, and I live it. I voted no to the tax increase because I thought that's something for a future board to really figure out what we're gonna do financially. And I've been in it, right? I talk to my principals and I talk to my parents and I talk to, the parents of the kids. I spend as much time in the schools as is even possible, with also being a mom and doing everything else that I do. And last year I was so honored to win my election last year, and it was because we wanted a different type of governance. We didn't want a top down. We wanted somebody that was going to be in the community and be a voice for the community, and that's what I've done. And I've worked really hard to make sure that parents feel heard, principals feel heard, teachers feel heard, and also everybody at the top feels heard. Because sometimes the answer has to be no, but I'm never going to tell you that I know better than you, and I'll not explain to you why we get to that no answer. And I felt like previously, I felt like that wasn't being done. That I was being told that I could never understand funding, or I could never understand why somebody would come up with a scenario where what I was saying was good or bad or whatever. And I've never done that to somebody. I will always explain why something is the way it is, even if I know it's going to make you mad. I have advocated in spaces that were very uncomfortable, where I knew that the answer was going to be no. The people in the room were going to say, you're crazy. But I still advocated and I still spoke up. And I commit to continue to do that so that we can have good people in our schools, and parents can feel heard, and nobody feels like I'm just going to brush them aside and not take them seriously.
Excellent. Well, you got a phone number? People can call you and ask you more questions?
I do.
Go ahead.
But it's on my flyer.
Oh, there you go.
I don't have that one memorized.
All right. Okay.
Okay. So the number is 801-341-9451. And hopefully you'll be getting one of these on your door. And I am always accessible. You can text me, you can call me, you can email me.
There's a website?
There's a website, emilyforschoolboard.com. I'm Emily for Timpanogos on Facebook, and I respond to everything. So please reach out. Let me know what questions you have, what you want to know.
Well, thank you for this evening.
Yeah.
It's been
Thank
good
you.
to get to know you.
Yeah.
And best of luck.
Thank you.